The whole room had just gone quiet, and something big was about to happen. At the front of the podium of Ashford Innovations' annual end of year party was Marcus Webb, already wearing the smile he'd rehearsed for several months for this exact moment. But in the back row, a 24-year-old intern named Grace Doyle, who was standing with her thumb resting on a single button on her phone, a recording that was about to end Marcus' career. Nobody in that room had the faintest idea what she was seconds away from playing, and by the end of this story, you'll understand exactly what and why she played what she played. 3 weeks earlier, Grace had walked into Ashford Innovations as every other intern would, sharp, quiet, and easy to overlook on her own terms, and under a name that wasn't fully hers. Nobody there knew who she actually was. She came in ready to work hard to get to the top. Nobody there knew how determined she was, or how carefully she was already laying the groundwork. The question that mattered wasn't whether she had the drive to succeed. It was whether she would let anyone take the work she had spent countless sleepless nights to build and go scot-free. Marcus Webb, Grace's boss, had been a manager at Ashford Innovations for 10 years and passed over for the director role twice, both times watching someone else's name go up on the door he'd wanted. He wasn't cruel in the workspace. He was worse than cruel. He was strategic. He had learned that the fastest way to look indispensable was to make sure everyone under him was doing work he could later call his own. With Grace as his new intern, that meant workload, not punishment exactly, just more reports that weren't hers to write, projects dumped on her desk at 5 on a Friday, meetings where she did the prep and he did the talking. He was her boss, and in a company that size, that meant one signature from him could end her internship before it became anything more. She knew it, and he knew she knew it. Neither of them ever said it out loud, but it sat in every conversation between them, quiet and understood. So Grace did what anyone will do when speaking up carries a cost they can't afford, yet she put her head down and worked on her own time. After the reports he'd assigned to her were finished, she started building something that mattered to her, a blueprint for digital platform that could connect small and mid-sized businesses who sell digital products and skills to markets and buyers in other countries, opening doors for companies that had always been stranded into serving only their own region. It wasn't in her job description. Nobody asked her to build it, but she built it anyway because she believed it could change what the company was capable of, and because for the first time since she'd started, it felt like something truly hers. Marcus noticed the folder on the shared drive before she ever meant for him to see it. Then one morning, Grace messaged Marcus one morning to let him know she wouldn't be in for work. Nothing urgent, just a day she needed. He replied with a simple thumbs up. No questions asked. It didn't occur to her to think twice about it. While she was gone, he went looking through her things and he found the folder on the shared drive, opened it, and read through everything she'd built, line by line, slide by slide. He didn't message her. He didn't ask anything. He simply copied everything onto his own laptop and closed the folder like it had never been touched. And 2 weeks passed before Grace heard anything about it at all. As an intern, she wasn't invited to board meetings. She wouldn't have known one had happened if a co-worker hadn't mentioned it in passing, practically buzzing with excitement. "You should have heard Marcus in there," she said. "He pitched this idea to connect the company to buyers overseas, different countries, different markets. The whole thing. The board loved it. They're already talking about green-lighting it." Grace heard this, and the smile on her face immediately faded into anger, and something in her snapped. A platform to connect the business to markets overseas, to different countries, she said. She'd heard that pitch before. She'd written it. She told herself it could be a coincidence. She almost believed it for about an hour. Then she started asking quiet questions. She then met co-worker who'd been in the board meeting room. Then she took a glance at the meeting agenda still open on a shared meeting folder. A slide deck file name that matched almost exactly one she'd saved to her own drive weeks earlier. And with that, she finally connected the dots. There was nothing left to know. It was her idea. He'd not only taken it, but also presented it as his own, and he hadn't said a single word to her about it. If you've ever found out that somebody took credit for what you did, you know exactly the kind of anger that comes after it. Comment, "I'm still watching" below if you've been there, because Grace was about to do something that Marcus didn't see coming. She found him at his desk the next morning, and this time she didn't lower her voice to soften it. "Why did you steal my plan?" she asked, her voice shaking with anger she'd been holding in since the day before. Marcus, as arrogant as ever, didn't even look up right away. When he did, his face carried the same mild irritation he wore whenever she cost him more than 30 seconds of his attention. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, flat, almost bored. "That was a team effort. You should be grateful I even looked at your draft. It was in a private folder. Marcus, you went in and took it." He leaned back slightly, and something in his tone shifted, quieter but sharper. "Careful how you talk to me," he said. "I sign off on your hours. I sign off on whether this internship turns into anything at all. You want to keep pushing this." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. They both already knew what he was really saying. That's one word from him, and she wouldn't have a desk to come back to on Monday. So she walked away before she said something that would hand him a reason. She tried HR anyway, even knowing how it would likely go. The woman across the desk was polite and sympathetic, but the message underneath the sympathy was clear. This was one intern's word against a manager's, and the company wasn't going to take an unprovable claim and turn it into a reason to lose someone with 10 years of tenure. A co-worker, meaning well, told her gently that this was just how it worked when you were starting out. You build the ladder, but someone else climbs it, and you learn to let it go if you wanted to survive long enough to build the next one. Grace went home that night and didn't let it go. She thought about the folder, the 2 weeks of silence, the thumbs up emoji he'd sent her without a second thought before quietly taking everything she had built, and she realized the only leverage she had left was one he'd never see come in his own mouth. 3 days later, she went back to his desk. She kept her voice flat, almost defeated, the voice of someone giving up. "Fine, I can't prove it was mine anyway, but at least can YPU put my name on the project," she said. But Marcus actually laughed low, pleased with himself, leaning back like a man certain he'd already won. "Come on, Grace. Who's going to believe an intern over a manager who's been here 10 years? He said, savoring it. You own the rough draft. That's it. That's all anyone will ever see. I built the version that actually got in front of the board. That's the version that counts. And let's be honest, you really want to risk your spot here over something you can't even prove? Grace nodded slowly, accepting defeat, thanked him for his time, and walked away not in anger, but with an expression that's hard to read. The town hall was packed 3 weeks later. The same room where this story began. Richard Ashford, the CEO, who had built Ashford Innovations Company from a 2-desk office into 400 employees company, stood at the front, about to announce Marcus's promotion to senior director. Before I do this, he began, I'd like to... Then a voice came from the back of the hall. Wait, Grace said, standing, her voice steadier than she felt. Can I say something first? The room turned. Marcus's smile didn't move, but something behind his eyes did. She walked to the front, set her phone on the podium, and pressed play. Then Marcus's own voice filled the room, unmistakable, saying, Who's going to believe an intern over a manager who's been here 10 years? I built the version that actually got in front of the board. That's the version that counts. And it's then revealed that when Grace had went to confront him again, she secretly recorded the conversation with her phone. The silence that followed was total. Marcus opened his mouth and nothing came out. He hadn't been beaten by an accusation. He'd been beaten by his own voice, played back to a room full of people he'd spent 10 years charming. Richard let the silence sit for a moment before he spoke. Calm, unhurried, his eyes on Marcus the entire time. I think it's time everyone in this room knew who they were listening to, he said. Grace Doyle is my niece. Her mother's maiden name is Doyle, and she's been working here under it since her first day because she wanted to be judged on her work, not her last name. He paused. As of 30 seconds ago, I think we all just found out exactly what that work is worth. Nobody needed to say much after that. The promotion never happened. Richard didn't yell, didn't make a scene. The recording had already said everything that needed saying. The rest was handled quietly through HR. Over the next few days, Grace didn't gloat either. She hadn't done any of this to win in front of a room. She did it because she'd learned something a lot of us learn the hard way, that when someone takes credit for your work, saying that's not fair usually isn't enough. Sometimes you have to be patient, keep quiet a little longer than feels comfortable, and hold on to the proof until the moment it can actually change something. If you were in Grace's shoes, what would you have done? Would you have confronted him the moment you found out, or waited like she did? Tell me in the comments. I'd like to see what you would have done. And if you thought this story interesting, subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next one.